Coming up on VPS Voices, we're talking about the 3 Bs. Learn what those are and why they're so important this school year. Plus, I'll tell you about my student-led magazine that gives a voice to students who aren't always heard. And we hear from staff about their hopes for the start of the school year. All of this and more coming up. Hello and welcome to VPS Voices. I'm Nora Vanrees, a student at the Vancouver School of Arts and Academics. I'm here with the superintendent of Vancouver Public Schools, Dr. Jeff Snell.
Hey Nora, thanks for joining us on our first ever episode, and we've got a lot to talk about. And I heard that you mentioned the 3 Bs, and one of the things that we're focusing on this year is belonging. And I think you're a student at VSAA, and you've had some experience with that. And I'd be curious about kind of how that's gone for you this year, and then maybe I'll talk a little about what we're doing as a district.
Sure. So belonging at VSAA is a really big part of our school, and I think that's something that's a big part of all VPS schools. We've analyzed panorama data, and we've seen all sorts of things that when students feel like they belong, their success goes up. So I've seen that at VSAA and all other schools. It's important that students feel like they belong, and we're doing some exciting work at the Student Advisor Committee to make that a reality for all students.
Yeah, I really appreciate students getting involved in this. The last couple of years have been pretty challenging for everyone as we've tried to figure out how to navigate the pandemic and then figure out how to come back to school and work with all the important health requirements and things like that. But it hasn't necessarily allowed us to really think about the school experience that we want for our students and our staff. And so you mentioned the 3 Bs, and so in my back to school message, we talked about building belonging better. And the reason we talked about better is because we're always trying to build belonging in our schools. Like, that's something that's always really important. We know when we can create a community for our learners, that learners feel safe and they're willing to kind of take risks and be vulnerable, and we're at our best when we learn that way. The better part isn't that people weren't doing it well or weren't working hard enough. It was just like, we're in a time now where we really got to concentrate on this. Like, it's really important. I think at the end of the day, I want every kid to leave school and feel like that was a great day, right? And I'm not naive to know that there's going to be bad days sometimes, but to know that somebody cares about you at the school and wants you to do better, and wants you to grow, that's a really important thing. Everybody needs a champion, and hopefully with building belonging better, we'll be able to deliver that for each kid. Let's take a moment to talk about my favorite thing. This month it's something shared by teacher Emily Peters. She's a first-year teacher at Skyview, and one of her icebreaker activities really struck a chord with kids. And with me, it was called If You Were in My Shoes. And she had students express who they are by designing shoes. They could choose to stay anonymous or share their names. It was an approachable way for kids to get to know one another without the pressure of getting up in front of 30 classmates. Well done, Emily, and well done to her students as well. Thank you. So Nora, I've been talking about our work in the district quite a bit, but I'd love to learn more about you. So can you tell us a little bit about school for you and what it's been like to be back in school again?
Yeah, so I'm a senior at the Vancouver School of Arts and Academics, which it can be a unique high school experience because of the integration of arts and the academics, but I do think it's a very exciting time to be back at school for all high school students. I know for me personally, it's been a little bit of a transition coming back from being online to then coming back in person this year and last year, but it's been very exciting and very positive.
What are some of the activities that you're really looking forward to your senior year?
Yeah, it's hard to summarize it all in just this short interview with you, Dr. Snell, but I would say a lot of those big school events that are coming back after COVID, like Day of Caring, a community service day at my school, Theme Day is coming up, where we spend a whole day on our art theme of the year. I know at VSAA, our theme this year is Shaping the Future, talking about how we can shape our future for a greener planet, and talking about sustainability. So those all-school community events are things I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, those are so important, and I think that connects back to what we talked about before about belonging, right? When you have those community events. And you're also involved in leadership at the district level. And so can you talk a little about why you decided to invest your time in another leadership opportunity? Because I know you do a lot.
Sure. So I would say that leadership at the school district is something that I take very personally and seriously. It's very important to me that every student feels like they are important, like they matter, and that they're represented at school, and they feel like they belong most of all. So I think me being a leader in the school district is just simply me playing my part and to make that a reality for every single VPS student.
And it's kind of exciting because last year you helped us with other students develop this model for advisory, a student advisory, and we had our first meeting, and that was a Zoom one, and we're having an in-person one coming up. And so what are some of your hopes for the students that are a part of this advisory?
Yeah, I really hope that the students in this student advisory group that we have at VPS feel empowered to talk about their personal experiences at school and feel open and excited to bring about their own suggestions of what we can do as a district to help students feel like they're important.
So great. So tell me a little bit more about yourself and what's important to you, and how do you spend your time outside of school?
Yeah, I do quite a lot outside of school. I'm the CEO of two nonprofits, one of which I founded in August of 2020. It's called Here and Queer, and we focus a lot on LGBTQ advocacy and helping LGBTQ kids in our community feel safe and feel like they matter.
Wow, two nonprofits. And, again, I hear this theme of everything that you say is kind of about service and support and helping people feel like they matter. Where did that come from? Like, how did you... It's not often that I talk with students who have started two nonprofits.
For me, it's all about giving back. I know as an individual, I've experienced some personal challenges, ones that students should never have to deal with, and I know a lot of kids deal with very hard circumstances, and if we just have one person we could turn to or some resources that we have access to, whether that be for mental health or for food or just finding somewhere to study after school, I think those little things can make a really big difference in a student's life, and I know that's what made a difference for me.
That's great. I love that idea of giving back, and often when I talk to teachers about why they do what they do, it's a similar answer what you gave. And so as you think to your future, I know you're a senior, there's a lot of pressure on what that might look like, but what are some of the things that you've thought about, and how do you continue that service kind of mentality as you leave high school and go on to next adventures?
Yeah. So I think that volunteering is always going to be a very big part of my life. I think that giving back to the community without any personal recognition or acknowledgement is very important, and it's fulfilling too. As for my personal future, I am planning to attend a four-year university, hoping to study political science and gender, women, and sexuality studies, to hopefully pursue a career in government to help bring this impactful change that I want to see in the society to fruition.
Wow. Nora, these nonprofits that you're working on, like what kinds of activities or structures or, what does it look like to be leading those nonprofits?
Yeah, so I lead two nonprofits, one of which I recently inherited leadership of, Magnify Wellness, a mental health nonprofit. But I would say my main focus is on the nonprofit I founded, Here and Queer, and we have a couple programs that I think are really helpful and impactful. One of which is our resource directory. A resource directory we've published online for free. It lets anyone online access free hotlines, articles to read, such as topics like coming out or talking about your identity with others. We also have resource kits that are distributed for free, which are in schools, hopefully soon. I know we have them at VSAA. So these resource kits have things like a local resource guide for someone's city. It has a little pride flag, a stuffed animal. And one of my more recent projects was Hearing Queer magazine, which was my junior project at VSAA. So for this, I collected student submissions of poetry around the United States, but most of them did come from our local community here in Vancouver. And I thought this project was really cool because it gave students an opportunity to not only showcase their queer identity, but to have that space in physical and digital media to be represented and had their art out there. So this book, called Hearing Queer magazine, it's on Amazon, available for purchase. And I'm excited to say that all of the proceeds go back to the nonprofit directly. So about one book sold sponsors the funds for one resource kit, which I'm very proud of.
Oh, that's amazing. And so then you took all this work that was submitted and published it, and so you're amplifying their voices as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a particular submission of work or an experience in that really stands out to you as like when you look back on it and you think, wow, that was really special?
Yeah. It's hard to choose just one. Choosing one piece out of all of these thoughtful pieces of people's life, honestly, it's impossible to just choose one, right?
Mm-hmm.
To summarize, I would say that it was very impactful and enlightening for me to read about other people's experiences that were different from my own. Just because I'm LGBTQ doesn't mean I have all of the answers. It doesn't mean I have all of the experiences that other people have. So just listening to these other poets and hearing their words and what they've gone through was very impactful for me.
Well, I'd think then it would be impactful for your readers as well, which I think is maybe one of your goals.
Yes, I would sure hope so. I think the goal of Hearing Queer is not only to raise awareness about LGBTQ issues, but to help people. And I think exposure and representation is a big part of that, and that's what this magazine hopes to achieve.
Well, I know a lot of our data that we collect from student surveys, whether it's district or state level surveys, shows that some kids are really feeling alone in that space, and when they're feeling alone, that's not good, right? We want them to feel supported. So thank you for stepping into that space and letting people know that they're not alone. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
And now I want to transition to a project I'm really passionate about. It's called In Our Own Words, and it's a chance for students and staff to share their experiences in our district. Today we're hearing from Sean O'Connor.
I think a lot of it comes from, I came from a divorce home, trauma in certain respects. I did not like school. School didn't like me. I've said a lot. High school and I decided to go our separate ways when I graduated. It wasn't a hurrah moment, other than probably me just leaving. I didn't care for school. It wasn't for me at that point in time. I ended up working at Tower Records and managing a record store for 10 years, and I think that was kind of my life point. And we actually ran a program there where we would take in high school students and underserved and have them come in and work, and I really latched on to that part of it. I think when I decided to go into education, and especially SPED, was I really fixated on, I never really felt like I had that person at a building or at a school, or at least somebody that I could go to and they would appreciate, understand me in certain ways, or at least help, guide me. So when I was kind of thrust in that position of being that one person, for several students, in various ways, either just family support, student support, academics, behavior, all those things, that's when I kind of, the light bulb went off that was where I needed to be. And I think I relished that opportunity to just kind of be that person. But I think with us moving forward, again, with that mentality that, we're here to serve our community and the people within the community. I come from SLC. My kiddos are the back of the bus and the ones who you cross the other side of the hall, and that's what I did for 5 years. And now I'm working into a different community of, again, they're the ones who sit in the back of the room and don't necessarily get pulled to the front to answer questions. I just hope as our district goes forward that we really, really embrace those kiddos. Because they have so much to offer, not only to the other kids, but to the staff in the building and the community, that I think it's a resource that we should really try to keep kind of mining. inclusion is the big word that gets thrown around, and it looks differently for a lot of various reasons. And I always, with the analogy is that my kids, I bought them a ticket on the plane. If they show up, the seat better be there for them. And just because they didn't show up, however many days in the school year, 240 days in a row, they might show up on the 241st day. And that's what I think we need to keep in mind, is that we do service all of the kids. And does it look differently? Absolutely. I mean, I get it. I've been in the trenches with a lot of things, but you also miss out on the magical moments of when you see them, make strides, and not just academically, behaviorally, with their peers, relationships with staff and throughout, is that you're limiting yourself.
Let's do a Q&A with Dr. Snell from the VPS community. We reached out to staff and community members to solicit questions, and here's what they want to know. Our first question says, how is the district handling COVID this year?
It's a great question. This has been an evolution each year as we've been working through the pandemic, but it definitely feels a little different this year in terms of obviously masks aren't required. We do still have a number of students and staff that wear masks, and sometimes that's just an everyday thing, and other time that's because of exposure or things like that. We're still managing students and staff that are getting sick and trying to support them, and providing resources like testing and things of that nature, and information about resources that are in the community. But it's definitely, I would say, scaled back in comparison to previous years where we were retrofitting cafeterias and trying to figure out how people could share space together and be safe. And the thing that I've learned about this, Nora, is that whatever we're doing now, like, it could evolve. And so trying to be prepared to whatever's happening with the pandemic or other factors that are in play, to be ready to respond accordingly. And, obviously our job is to keep students and staff safe. We take that responsibility really seriously, and we appreciate the partnership with public health to help us navigate this. So my hope is that we'll continue to see less, involvement with this as we proceed, but we'll be ready to respond if we have to.
Here's question number 2. I've heard that the district is doing strategic planning. What exactly is that, and how does it affect staff and students?
Yeah, so the district has a long history of strategic planning, and what it is to really just take a pause and gather stakeholders, students, staff, families, community members, and ask them what's important to them as a school district that we should be working on, and what goals should we have. And public schools are really kind of a heart of the community in terms of the activities that happen. People love their children, the community loves their children, and so we want to hear from them what they want from the school district. And so through the years we've had those processes in place, and then we were set to do another one in 2020, and then obviously things kind of changed in 2020 a bit, and so we've had a pause, and so we're revisiting it now. And I'm really excited because we're also thinking differently about how we connect with community. The pandemic has taught us there's lots of different ways to connect. And so throughout this year, there'll be experiences that anybody in our community can participate in. There's kind of a level where it's just surveys and just telling us what they think a graduate, the skills and attributes just graduates should have. And then there's more focused kinds of settings where we're having conversations with people and really trying to drill down to specific, experiences maybe in the district that people think that we could do better or that we need to do more of or less of. And so it'll be a full year process. And then about this time next year, when you're off changing the world at a college somewhere, we'll probably be talking about the plan and what our focus areas are. We mentioned previously the student advisory. That advisory group is going to play an important role in this too. We'll share input that the district gets and ask for student voice around this too.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
A lot of work too.
Our final question. I saw that VITA is finally opening up, but not as a regular school. What's happening there?
Yeah, so back in 2017, our community approved a bond. And a bond is usually related to building some new schools and upgrading infrastructure in the district. so grateful for our community to support us that way. And we're really lucky in Vancouver Public Schools to have some amazing facilities that not just our students benefit from, but from the community as a whole benefits from. Some of those auditoriums and sports complexes, and they get used all the time. So in that bond, there were 2 new elementary schools, Vida and RBG. And RBG will not be ready until next year, and Vida was ready a little early. And the pandemic kind of changed how many students we have. Our enrollment's not been quite as growing as it was anticipated back in 2017. And so our school board kind of reviewed the situation and decided, like, well, let's open the 2 elementaries together. Like, let's not have 2 years where we're doing this process of boundary revision and all that stuff. And so in the meantime, let's think about how we could utilize Vida in a way that impacts all of the families in the district. And so Vida is designed to be a project-based learning school where learning is more integrated into various subjects areas. Instead of concentrating on just math or just language arts, you might have a project that incorporates both of those ideas. And so this year, the Vida staff will be hosting all of our 2nd through 5th grade students in the entire district. And their teachers will come with them, and they'll have a week-long experience there at the school. It's almost like a field trip. And we've partnered with the Fort Vancouver National Historic Society, and so they'll walk down to the fort. They'll get to experience that as well. And while the students are experiencing that, we're going to support the teachers with professional learning experiences. So it's a lab school this year. We're going to learn a lot from the process, and we're hoping that students have a ton of fun, like exploring. Some of the schools will be working together at the same time, so they'll get to meet new kids and new teachers. Just super excited about this opportunity, and grateful that our community would, one, help us build a school, and then our school board would be willing to be flexible and think about, okay, how can we maximize this opportunity in a new way? And when we think about what we talked about earlier about belonging and community, like, how cool that all of our 2nd through 5th grade students will have this common experience as they grow up and as they come together at middle schools or high schools. You know, I'm hoping that, 5-10 years from now, kids will just say, remember when we did that at Vida? And everybody, yeah, I totally remember that. So it's really exciting. We have a dedication in October for the building, and then after this year, we'll figure out what students should attend there all the time. And so that will be a process this year that we go through, and so more to come on that.
It's so exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what Vida will bring to the district.
Me too.
We want to end with something fun, and so we've been keeping an eye on social media posts from folks across our district, and we wanted to share some of our favorite posts. The first one comes from the Lincoln Elementary Parent Staff Group. They celebrated the first day of school with a group photo. The parents thanked the staff for welcoming back the students. I know the staff was excited to do it. Great partnership happening at Lincoln.
Our next post comes from Skyview High School. The robotics team really outdid itself and built a t-shirt cannon named Mark. They brought it out at a recent Storm football game, blasting t-shirts into the stands for all of the students in attendance. The Skyview robotics team competes all year long and has won several competitions, and they're certainly winning life with this cannon. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, and our final post comes from Fort Vancouver High School. The Ballet Folklorico put on a traditional performance in the school's atrium in front of students, staff, and special guests. It's a club at school that celebrates the traditional dances of Mexico. It's one of many ways our schools are honoring the contributions of Hispanic Americans this month. What a beautiful performance. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. And Nora, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope that you'll stay tuned for the next episode. And thank you again for watching. And let's have a great school year.